You're no longer needed. We're getting a divorce. As soon as $200,000 of severance pay came through, my husband William suddenly brought up divorce. Understood. Let's get a divorce. What? After that, I was determined to make my husband's life a living hell. I, Olivia, am 67 years old. My late dad ran a company, and I was brought up without want as the daughter of a president from a young age. At that time, not as many people went to college, and I was no exception, going to a junior college. After graduating from junior college, Dad brought up the topic of marriage. The partner was the son of the then executive vice president of Dad's company, William, who was 2 years younger than me. I had never considered marriage, but out of respect for Dad, I agreed to at least meet William. The William the first met for the first time on the day of the meeting was a fine young man with a kind smile inherited from the executive vice president. William was still only 20 years old at the time. However, his stories of working at a local company after high school graduation were very exciting to me, who only knew student life. He knew so much more than me, and William seemed reliable and shining. Thus, within half a year from the marriage talks I was initially not keen on, we smoothly got married. Shortly thereafter, William switched jobs to Dad's company, and though he struggled with the change in job type, he worked hard. Our 3 children, now adults, have each started their own families and live independently. With the children having left the nest, our house felt suddenly spacious, and I was enjoying living just with William again after a long time. Now, with Dad gone and the company entrusted to reliable people, William, who had worked there for 45 years thanks to Dad, was finally facing mandatory retirement this year. Thanks to his long service, once the severance pay is out, we had planned to go on a trip to a hot spring or something. And on William's last day of work, I was busy preparing to celebrate grandly with our children invited. Wow, Mom, you really went all out with the cooking. Dad's retiring, huh? Gotta find a hobby so he doesn't get old and bored. Grandpa's going to have every day off now? That's nice. Our eldest daughter even brought her children, making it a lively wait for William's return. However, the guest of honor didn't come back, no matter how late it got. As it got late and we couldn't reach him, we decided to disband for the night, calming the worried children by suggesting he might be celebrating with his coworkers. I felt bad for the sons who drove here after work, but I sent them off with the prepared food as souvenirs, saying, "Let's celebrate together again properly another time." Alone at home, I stared at the phone for ages, but still no contact. I continued to wait in the living room for William's return, but he didn't come home even by morning. Messages of concern kept coming from the children. With the situation unchanged, I gave up replying to those messages and tried calling William again. The phone rang a long time. Could it really be something? Thinking this, I made the 4th call, and finally, the phone connected. Olivia, you're really persistent. The voice on the other end of the phone was William's, sounding slightly annoyed. Hello? That's good, everyone's worried. Where are you? I told him about trying to celebrate his retirement yesterday with the children gathered and how we were worried because we couldn't contact him. Without even a murmur to indicate he was listening, I couldn't help but ask his whereabouts again. So, where are you? You wouldn't know. I've retired from my job now, and I've decided to live freely, so I rented a new place. What? You rented a place? William's unexpected words made me ask again. Then, William started laughing over the phone. I'll tell you now, why do you think I married you? To get into your dad's company and take the good parts, obviously. Though it was unexpected for me that your dad didn't give me the president's seat but to someone else. Despite all the effort I put in to please him, that's rough. After 45 years of marriage, the true nature of the man I had been with was so vile. I felt dizzy. Angered at how he belittled Dad, I opened my mouth to say something. But cutting me off, William continued smugly. Well, me, who didn't go to college and joined a small company, managed to climb up to executive vice president by marrying you. I did well. You and your dad have served me well. To think you always thought that way. You're the worst. Driven by frustration and disbelief, I found myself uttering disparaging words to William for the first time in our marriage. Words I had never allowed myself to say no matter how angry I was with him. Yet William seemed utterly unconcerned by my words. The worse, the better. I'm in a good mood now, with a new place without you and $200,000 of severance pay in hand. Then, with an exaggerated cough, he stated clearly. Meaning, you're no longer needed. We're getting a divorce. I could just imagine William's smug face as he said this over the phone. It would be a lie to say I wasn't furious. However, now that he had brought up divorce, I was only too happy to agree, as if fortune had finally turned my way. Understood. Let's get a divorce. What? My response seemed to surprise him as he asked again in a strange voice. Divorce is fine. Should I send the divorce papers, or will you come back to sign them? William seemed taken aback by my calm response, but quickly regained his bravado. I don't ever want to see your face again. I'll give you the address, so send them. I replied to William's spiteful comment and noted down the address. Indeed, it was in a completely different area, neither his hometown nor where we lived. He had apparently rented a house on entirely new ground. Later, I sent the divorce papers with my signature to William's new house. A few days later, a notification that the divorce papers had been processed arrived at our home. Knowing the divorce was finalized brought a certain relief to my chest. Then, as if timed, a call came. Hello? As expected, it was my now ex-husband, William, on the line. Did you get the notification too? Now that we're officially strangers, I thought we should settle the financial matters properly. All I ever received was a set amount for living expenses. You were the one managing everything. There were no valuables like debit cards left at the house. William must have everything by now. I wondered if a divorce like this meant splitting everything in half, as I organized my thoughts. I'm aware of that, William prefaced. The mortgage on the house is paid off, and since you're living there, you can have it. There won't be any other distribution of property, so do whatever you want with the house. No distribution of property? What about the savings and the severance pay? There are no savings, that's why I'm giving you the house. Be grateful. Whether there truly were no savings, I didn't know, but this way, William had managed to abscond with the entire $200,000 of his severance pay. 2.5 years after these events, I continued to live quietly in the house I was given, avoiding any contact with my ex-husband. My children, upon hearing the details of the divorce, were furious, suggesting I confront Dad or consult a lawyer. But I thanked them and insisted I wanted to live quietly now. It took quite an effort to calm their anger, but recently, my ex-husband is no longer a topic of conversation. And today, my phone has been ringing off the hook since morning. Even without answering, I knew it must be William. Because, after 2.5 years post-divorce, I had finally begun my revenge on William. He must be growing increasingly irritated by now. I decided to finally pick up the phone as the calls started coming in more frequently. Did it finally reach you? Sorry to keep you waiting. Immediately after confirming the caller, I delivered the line I had been holding onto for so long. I'm claiming compensation for infidelity during our marriage. Indeed, William had been having an affair with a subordinate at his company just before his retirement. I had learned of this and immediately began gathering evidence, planning to divorce after his retirement. However, conveniently for him, William hid his affair and initiated the divorce, leaving behind an old house while taking all the severance pay. While the divorce itself was somewhat expected, I was determined to make him pay for his selfish and cowardly actions until the very end. Now, being able to claim compensation from both him and his affair partner, I felt an inappropriate thrill that the start had finally begun. William, on the other end of the phone. "It's been over 2 years since we divorced. There's no way you can claim compensation," sounded irritated. However, I had already consulted a lawyer and sent a certified letter to both of them. Compensation for infidelity can be claimed within 3 years of becoming aware of the fact. I explained this to him carefully and in detail. William and his affair partner, confident they had managed to hide their secret or perhaps complacent about the impending divorce, had inadvertently provided ample evidence in a short period when investigated. Thus, because the investigation period was short, even 2.5 years after the divorce, there was still ample time to claim compensation. I had been waiting for this moment. The claim was for $60,000 each from both of them, citing repeated infidelity despite having 3 children with me and the other woman knowing William was married. "I got the claim, so discuss it with your wife and contact my lawyer next time, not me. I'm not paying for something that happened so long ago." I ignored William's ranting and hung up the phone. Since then, I had set William's number and unknown numbers to silent, but one day, William suddenly showed up at my house. I happened upon him standing dumbfounded in front of the entrance as I returned from shopping. Seeing me, William looked from the house to me and was taken aback. "Did you rebuild this place?" He seemed surprised by the newly renovated look of our house. "What does it matter to you now?" I said, ignoring him and trying to enter the house. Then, William raised his voice. As if remembering something. "I'm not going to pay any compensation, just so you know." He began to make a scene in front of the entrance. Concerned about the neighbor's eyes, I reluctantly let him in. "Let's talk inside." Once inside, William rudely looked around the room. To interrupt his unpleasant gaze, I spoke up. "It's been renovated nicely, right? I had a full remodel done right after you left." "Huh? Where did you get the money? There's no way a housewife like you could afford such an amount." William instantly flew into a rage, demanding to know where the money came from. His quick temper hadn't changed since we were married. Feeling no need to hide it, I honestly told him that I had long been the owner of real estate passed down from Dad. Then, William's demeanor changed, demanding his share. "If you had that income during our marriage, it should be part of the property distribution. I'll calculate and claim half of it. Actually, since you hid it from me, I'll add a 20% delinquency charge." I was appalled by his greed but explained patiently. "Look, you can only claim distribution of property within 2 years after a divorce. That right has long expired. You can rant all you want, but legally, you can't claim it, and I'm not obligated to comply." Hearing this, William slammed the table and stood up. Then snorted and spoke with a face as if he was convinced of victory. "Keep talking. I have my plans too." And so, he left without further discussion about the compensation. Later, William came for a discussion with his new wife, the former affair partner, and a lawyer. His plan, it seemed, was to employ professional help as I had. However, as expected, he was advised that a property distribution claim was no longer possible, so they decided to negotiate reducing the compensation for the affair. "Don't think everything will go your way. I'm not paying you anything. In truth, William was trying to get out of paying altogether, but after both lawyers painstakingly explained the validity of the compensation, even his own lawyer admitted that avoiding payment was impossible given the evidence. Frustrated that his lawyer also agreed payment was unavoidable, William and his affair partner changed lawyers, only to receive the same advice. After prolonged discussions, William's side finally proposed to reduce the compensation. I accepted the offer, knowing that I had initially inflated the claim amount, anticipating a reduction. The settled amount didn't meet my original claim, but I had always earned more than William even before retirement. And my finances were stable, so the reduction didn't bother me. Moreover, I had been periodically checking on the two of them after the divorce, and this claim was timed and calculated based on their situation. Investigating their lives was easy with the address obtained during the divorce filing, allowing a detective to quickly gather information. Knowing they had likely spent the severance pay and were saving for a car through their jobs, I compromised on an amount that would just require them to hand over their savings. William accused me of being wicked, but I was determined to bring him and his affair partner down for my dad, myself, and my life. Thus, I was satisfied with the outcome, securing my finances at an opportune time. Later, William and his partner had to pay a significant amount in compensation, though reduced. My estimate might have been off, or they truly had nothing left, as their savings for a car weren't enough. They moved to a cheaper apartment and continued to make payments while bickering. Watching them fall into despair, I might indeed be malicious, as I felt utterly liberated. Having sold the renovated house, I now live in a high-rise condo closer to my children's homes, enjoying every day to the fullest. Here is your dinner, Abigail. Nan, my MIL, laughed as she placed a broth without any ingredients in front of me. While my husband and in-laws were enjoying a luxurious steak, this was all I got. Next to me, stunned by Nan's treatment, my husband was rolling on the floor laughing. But today, I had made a certain resolution. My name is Abigail. I'm 27 years old. My mom passed away due to illness when I was in middle school, and since then, my dad raised me alone. Dad owns a small business in the manufacturing sector, and I help out with his work on a part-time basis. I have a husband named Daniel, who is 3 years older than me. Daniel is a salesman for one of my dad's clients. We hit it off immediately after meeting and gradually progressed in our relationship, getting married last year. The wedding was a small affair, attended only by close family and friends, but it was very much in line with what we wanted. Currently, we live in an apartment within walking distance from my childhood home. We had been building a good relationship with my in-laws, who live an hour and a half away by bus, but since getting married, they have gradually started to look down on my dad and me. Abigail's dad's company wouldn't survive without Daniel. I wish you'd show more gratitude to Daniel. They'd calmly say such outrageous things to me. How many times have they told me that my dad's business only exists because Daniel's company does business with us, and that I should be more grateful to Daniel? Initially, I kept this from my dad, but one day, I ended up complaining in front of him and he found out. Dad told me to get a divorce, but the truth was, without Daniel's company, my dad's business would face severe difficulties, so I chose to endure for my dad's sake. At first, Daniel protected me from his parents' verbal abuse. Don't worry about it, telling me. However, after constantly being told by the in-laws that Daniel is above Abigail since he married her, he unconsciously started to take a superior stance over me. And gradually, he became more arrogant, now often making snide remarks and acting haughtily. The kind Daniel I met at the beginning is gone. Amidst all this, we decided to visit the in-laws' house for the upcoming long weekend. When we arrived at the in-laws' house by train, they welcomed us at the entrance, But, Daniel. Welcome. We've been waiting for you. Ah, Daniel. Good to see you. You must be tired. I knew it, but the in-laws welcomed only my husband, treating me as if I didn't exist. I'm here too. Thanks for having us today. I managed the customary greeting, but the in-laws only talked to my husband, ignoring me. Still, I was about to start preparing dinner as always ordered, when Nan spoke to me. Ah, no need to prepare anything today. I ordered some luxurious steaks for dinner. Oh? Is that so? Thank you. It seems Nan had ordered steaks for delivery, so I moved from the kitchen to the living room. High-quality steak, it's been a while. Daniel seemed to be in a good mood, relaxing. As I was thinking it was about dinner time, the doorbell rang, and Nan went to receive the delivery. She started placing the steaks on the table, but to my shock, there were only 3 servings. Luxurious steaks were placed in front of Fael John, my husband, and Nan. What about my portion? Abigail's dinner is this. Eh? What Nan placed in front of me was a soup without any ingredients. It's from yesterday. We ate all the ingredients yesterday, so it's just the broth. Nan laughed loudly. John and my husband also burst into laughter. What's so funny, my husband was laughing so hard he was having trouble breathing. Silent, I was stunned as Nan, laughing condescendingly, uttered unbelievable words. Your poor bottom-of-the-barrel company should just shut down already. This ingredient-less soup is enough for a poor person like you. Nan's ugly laughing face. To that. This is the last time I'll be meeting with you, so I don't care. I said. What do you mean? Ignoring the surprised Nan, I took out a certain document from my bag and thrust it towards Daniel. What's this? Divorce papers. I've already signed, so can you just sign them quickly? Caught off guard by my actions, Daniel stared at the divorce papers for a few seconds before. Why all of a sudden? It's true that Dad's company isn't doing well. Don't get mad. He tried to reason with me. Continuing. You usually don't talk back no matter what's said. What's gotten into you today? He asked. I'm tired of putting up with it. You don't need a poor man's wife either, do you? I coldly informed him. Huh? What are you talking about? My husband showed a puzzled look. To such a husband, the in-laws chimed in. That's right, that's right. No need for a poor man's wife. Just get a divorce. They incited. Daniel hesitated for a while but, under the pressure of the in-laws' momentum, signed the divorce papers. I took the divorce papers and silently left the in-laws' house. I went straight to the office to submit the divorce papers, and with that, my divorce from Daniel was officially finalized. Feeling relieved, I returned home, took the luggage I had packed in advance, and went back to my parents' house. In fact, I had been considering divorce for a while, which is why I had packed my bags. Daniel had no idea I was preparing to leave. He had been indifferent to me lately and probably never dreamed that I was considering divorce. Back at my parents' house, I told Dad about what happened at the in-laws' house and reported that I had divorced Daniel. Dad offered me words of consolation and told me I could stay at home as long as I wanted. The next morning, Daniel, who had returned from the in-laws' house, called me several times, but I ignored all of them. Daniel came to Dad's company as part of his rounds, but Dad, knowing the whole situation, was furious and tried to send Daniel away. Angered by Dad's attitude, Daniel yelled, "Then the deal is off!" and broke the contract and left. Dad and I blocked Daniel and his parents' phone numbers and handled all matters related to the distribution of property after the divorce through a lawyer. I never wanted to see Daniel or the in-laws again. The lawyer was competent and handled the proceedings efficiently, which was a great help. After a while, the lawyer contacted me to say that Daniel had come up with something outrageous. He said he would consider reconciling if I apologized. What a joke. He doesn't seem to realize he's the one who got divorced. I absolutely refused to reconcile. Of course, I decided to ignore it. Then, Daniel started hinting at reviving the business dealings with Dad's company as a condition for reconciliation. If you reconcile, I'll revive the dealings with Dad's company. Daniel seemed to think I would agree to reconcile immediately if he hinted at reviving Dad's company's dealings, but Dad and I ignored this as well. As Dad and I didn't agree no matter how long it took, Daniel came to Dad's company to talk directly. However, he was stunned upon seeing the sign.
Eh? What's with this sign?
Instead of Dad's company's sign, it had changed to a web design company's sign. Dad had been considering closing down the company due to financial difficulties. After many discussions and consultations between Dad and me, Dad decided to close the business and use the store as my new business office. In fact, my main profession is a web designer. Working at Dad's store was just helping out. That's why I worked there part-time, not as a full-time employee. While working as a web designer, I also helped with Dad's company's work all along. Since Dad closed the company, naturally, there was no need for dealings with Daniel's company. There's no need to request business dealings anew as my work has nothing to do with Daniel's company.
Hey! Abigail, you're there, right? Why has the sign changed? What happened to your dad's company?
Daniel was yelling in front of my company's sign.
Come out, Abigail!
Initially, I ignored him, but he kept shouting and wouldn't leave. To avoid causing a nuisance to the neighbors, I reluctantly showed myself. Keep it down. Please go home.
Finally, you come out. Explain. What happened to Dad's company?
Daniel demanded an explanation. It's obvious, isn't it? Dad's company closed down. The store is being used as my web design office now. When I explained, Daniel scoffed as if mocking me. Huh? Being a web designer is such an unstable job. It's going to be tough going forward. I'll reconcile and take care of you. How much more is this man going to belittle me? What are you talking about? I refuse. When I naturally refused.
Why not?
Daniel got furious and started causing a scene again. Fed up with Daniel's bizarre tantrum, I finally called the police. Soon after, the police arrived and escorted Daniel out. Until the end.
Hey, you'll regret not reconciling with me. I'm saying I'll reconcile, so just accept it.
Daniel was shouting. Why is he so obsessed with reconciling? There's no point in reconciling with a wife he mocked for being poor now that he's gotten a divorce. Feeling the oddity of Daniel's actions, I immediately set out to investigate why he was so insistent on reconciling. Then, a shocking truth was revealed. Daniel had been fired from his company. In fact, Dad had built such a good relationship with the president of Daniel's company, based on past achievements, that he was considered a go-to person in times of trouble. Therefore, when Daniel and I got married, the president and others were pleased, but they were furious when they found out Daniel had unilaterally terminated the contract with Dad's company due to his own divorce drama. Unable to take responsibility, Daniel was fired and was trying to get rehired by remarrying me to mediate between Dad and the company. So that's why he was demanding reconciliation so insistently. I was dumbfounded. Upon learning this, Dad and I immediately reported Daniel's nuisance behavior to his company. We made sure Daniel was warned not to come near me and Dad again. This made Daniel's re-employment hopeless.
Am I really never going back to the company, unemployed, me?
Proud Daniel couldn't accept reality and seemed to have been living a reclusive life for a while. Eventually, as his savings began to run out, Daniel found it difficult to continue paying the rent for the apartment we used to live in by himself and fled back to his parents' house. Poor Daniel. Forget about such an ungrateful wife. You can stay here as long as you like. Daniel's parents welcomed him back home and seemed to accept him. They are apparently doting on Daniel and taking care of him. My new business, having secured a dedicated workspace in the form of a storefront, is off to a smooth start with increased efficiency. Having a physical store seems to offer a sense of security, allowing me to connect with people and local shops I hadn't been involved with before. Word of mouth is gradually increasing my customer base, and I'm enjoying my work every day. Dad is still young, so he looked for a new job and was hired by a factory that was a business partner of the company Daniel used to work for, based on his track record. The factory is large, with many people working there. Friendly and competent, Dad quickly became well acquainted with his colleagues and seems to enjoy working in a large group. I make sandwiches for Dad every day, and one time when Dad forgot his sandwich, I delivered it and was happy to see Dad working lively and smiling. Everyone working in the factory seems nice. They respect each other, sharing their skills, knowledge, and experience generously to achieve better results. Inspired by Dad, I vowed to work hard at my job too. Meanwhile, after returning to his parents' house, Daniel attempted to find a job but seemed to fail at every turn and ended up feeling defeated. Daniel's parents consoled him.
How pitiful. The companies that don't hire Daniel just don't see his worth. Yeah, exactly. It's like everyone's just messing around. I'm offering to work, and they dare not hire me. Daniel isn't at fault. Take your time looking for a job.
Even after that, Daniel took several employment exams but failed miserably. Despite having an average education and work history, he couldn't even pass the document screening because he was aiming too high. Stressed from unsuccessful job hunting, Daniel started frequenting slot machines and eventually ended up in debt. Every day, unemployed Daniel lazed around at home, not helping with housework and going to slot machines. Initially, Daniel's parents spoiled him endlessly, but they eventually ran out of patience with his lack of initiative to work and constant slot machine visits.
We can't take care of an unemployed person. Get out!
They yelled at Daniel, turning against him, but Daniel retorted,
Didn't you say I could stay as long as I liked? What's this all of a sudden? I'm not leaving.
And they seemed to argue frequently. Even when told to at least help with housework, Daniel does nothing and lazes around. He frequently orders pizza and steak for delivery with his parents' money, significantly increasing the food expenses. He would also finish all the food in the refrigerator at night. Continuing such a lifestyle, he became increasingly overweight and unhealthy. I think Daniel's parents are partly to blame for Daniel becoming like this, but they don't seem to realize it at all. They act as if they're victims of a good-for-nothing son. The neighbors talk, making their lives very uncomfortable. That family harassed their wife until she left, and their son got fired and came back unemployed. Sometimes, the parent-child arguments are so intense that the sound of breaking dishes can be heard. Noise complaints have led to the police being called several times, and they've been warned. Daniel's debt only grew, leading him to buy a large number of lottery tickets as a last resort, which, of course, didn't win, causing debt collectors to start showing up at his house. Finally realizing he needed to earn money, Daniel, thinking it would be easy, applied for and got a part-time job at a grocery store. However, The part-time job at the grocery store was tens of times harder than Daniel had imagined, with a wide range of tasks. Underestimating the grocery store part-time job, Daniel struggled significantly. He worked there, being scolded by student part-timers, but somehow managed to keep the job. I happened to pass by the grocery store recently and saw Daniel working there, looking nothing like his former self, filled with confidence. Now, he looked downcast, dark, overweight, and disheveled, almost like a different person. I muttered to myself that it was his responsibility, feeling refreshed. I thought I was done with love, but thanks to a friend's introduction, I recently started dating a sincere man. I introduced him to Dad, and Dad seems to like him very much. We're planning a trip together, which I'm really looking forward to. Divorcing Daniel was truly the best decision. I'm living a very fulfilling and happy life, both personally and professionally.
So, Mom, you secretly helped with Walter's study abroad expenses without telling me, huh? Did you really support him expecting something in return with that little money, planning to rely on Walter instead of us for your old age?
I don't understand how my son Hugo knows about the secret support, but I have no intention of depending on my grandson Walter for my future living.
Yes, I did support him. But that was with personal money from Scott and me. You have no right to nag about it. And what's wrong with helping Walter?
Deciding it's less trouble to be honest than to awkwardly deny and keep secrets, I replied assertively to Hugo's high-handed attitude.
People can say whatever they want, but Walter is about to get married soon. After the wedding, he'll be living with us, so relying on Walter would be futile.
Never did I imagine hearing about my beloved Walter's wedding in such a manner, and not even directly from him but through Hugo, of all people, mixing various emotions into a complex feeling. Yet, seeing Walter getting married is a joyous occasion for me, who has watched him grow up since he was little. Walter is at that age already.
When is the wedding? Mom, even if Walter invites you to the wedding, you better not come.
You'll be in the way. To be treated as a nuisance by Hugo, my own son, makes me wonder if he even remembers how much I've raised him. Being treated so much as a nuisance made me suspect if there really was a reason he didn't want me at the wedding.
All right, I won't go even if Walter invites me.
At that point, I decided to accept Hugo's assertion for the time being and see how things would unfold. And then, on the day of the wedding, I was visiting the venue wearing a dress passed down from my mother.
Christiana, I've brought the newsletter.
On a weekday afternoon, enjoying my usual lunchtime variety show, my neighbor came over, calling out my name loudly, to deliver the neighborhood newsletter. After a brief chat for about 10 minutes, I mentioned I was boiling water, effectively ending the conversation so it wouldn't drag on. This is because, during this time slot, the lunchtime variety show always has interesting segments on air. Today's feature was Grandchildren and Grandmothers Special. The segment explored the secrets behind the close relationships between grandchildren and their grandmothers. My name is Christiana, and I too have a lovely grandchild. In my 20s, when my husband Scott and I were blessed with 2 sons, I worked while raising them. After our sons grew up and became independent, Scott and I looked forward to spending a quiet retirement together, blessed with grandchildren, enjoying a typical happy life. One day, our eldest son's family, specifically our grandson Walter, who was still a college student at the time, came to stay at our house. He wanted to spend his summer vacation here to concentrate on his studies. Walter, who had been close to Scott and me since he was little, treated us the same way even as a college student. We were delighted by this. That evening, I made Walter's favorite dish from when he was little, my special fried chicken. Seeing his adorable smile, reminiscent of when he was in elementary school, naturally made both Scott and me smile. After dinner, while watching TV, Walter, with a serious look on his face, said he wanted to talk to us about something. It was about studying abroad. Hugo's family, my son and his wife, aren't exactly wealthy. It's not that they don't have money, but Hugo seems to have a significant resistance to spending money. Walter was able to go to college thanks to his own efforts, having seen his parents' financial attitudes. Walter must have suppressed his desire to study abroad, considering his parents' situation. However, as discussions about studying abroad became more serious at university, he found it difficult to talk to his parents about it and came to us for advice.
I want to study abroad for my education, but I can't talk to my parents about it. So, I came to ask you, Granny and Grandpa, for advice.
Walter's concern seemed more serious than we imagined, and looking at the study abroad materials he handed us, it was indeed a matter that couldn't easily be discussed with Hugo. Hugo is quite the frugal one, going so far as to say if Walter can't get a scholarship for college, he shouldn't go at all. Still, unable to give up on college, Walter managed to go by combining scholarships and the savings he had secretly amassed from part-time jobs since high school. However, the amount needed this time was beyond what he could handle on his own. Walter's grades in college were excellent, and the school offered some support, but the amount he had to pay out of pocket was far more than a college student could afford. That's why he came to us for help. After some thought, Scott and I decided to secretly use some of our retirement funds to cover the rest of Walter's study abroad expenses without telling Hugo.
Even though we discussed it, are you sure this is all right? This money is for you from both of us, okay?
It's fine, it's for your sake, dear Walter. Besides, you have a future. It's better for you to use it than for us. Thanks to our support, Walter was able to fulfill his dream of studying abroad. A few years later, sadly, Scott passed away due to a chronic illness, and my two sons are now arguing fiercely about my future care. The younger son and his wife, currently living abroad due to work, think it would be difficult for me, now elderly, to move and live overseas. When this was brought up, Hugo, the elder, accused the younger of trying to push the responsibility of my care onto him.
I don't want to do it. Taking care of Mom in her old age? We've got our own family's livelihood to think about. And if we have to add Mom's care into the mix, do you have any idea what will happen?
It pained me to see my sons arguing loudly, especially since their argument was about my future care.
Both of you, I'm fine on my own. Besides, there's no need for you to fight over me.
I told the two of them that if it came to this, I would make it clear that from now on, I intended to live by myself. However, when Hugo heard my words, he pressed me further as if he had remembered something.
Speaking of which, Mom, you secretly supported Walter's study abroad expenses, didn't you? Did you support him with such small change expecting a return, planning to rely on Walter instead of us for your old age?
I don't know why Hugo knows about the secret support for Walter's study abroad expenses, but I have no intention of relying on Walter for my future life.
Yes, I did support him. But that was with personal money from Scott and me. You have no right to nag me about it. And what's wrong with helping Walter?
Deciding that it was less trouble to be honest than to deny and keep secrets, I responded boldly to Hugo's aggressive attitude.
You can say whatever you want, but Walter is about to get married soon. After the marriage, he'll live with us, so relying on Walter would be pointless.
Never would I have imagined learning about my beloved Walter's marriage in such a manner, especially not from Hugo instead of Walter himself, mixing my feelings with various emotions. Yet, for me, who has watched Walter grow up since he was little, nothing could be more joyous than his marriage.
Walter is already at that age, huh? So when is the wedding? Don't you dare come to Walter's wedding, Mom, even if you're invited.
You'd just be in the way. To be treated like a nuisance by Hugo, my own son, makes me wonder if he remembers how much I've done for him. Being treated this way makes me suspect there must be a real reason he doesn't want me at the wedding.
Understood, I won't go even if Walter invites me.
At that point, I decided to accept Hugo's assertion for the time being. And then, as time passed, on the wedding day itself, I arrived at the venue in a dress that had been passed down through my family for generations. Guests of Walter and the bride, Marion, were gathering one after another at the reception venue. Among the guests were classmates from their student days and colleagues from work, various people who came to celebrate their marriage. I was told that I had to show the invitation at the reception to enter, so I headed to the reception, where I saw Hugo. Seeing me, who was not supposed to be here, Hugo became furious with a terrible look on his face.
You promised not to come even if invited. Why are you here?
I led him away to a secluded spot in the venue to avoid disturbing the other guests with a loud voice, and we started to talk.
Indeed, I said I wouldn't come on Walter's invitation. But I am here at the invitation of the bride, Marion. I haven't broken any promise.
I left Hugo, still angry, saying that I couldn't be late for the ceremony and didn't continue the conversation, quickly leaving the spot. All the guests gathered in the venue, and the ceremony was about to start. I sat in the seats for Marion's guests, eagerly awaiting the appearance of the couple. Feeling unsettled, I caught Hugo's eye as he sat on the groom's side. Seeing me sitting on the bride's side, as I had said, he seemed confused, and despite the joyous occasion of the wedding, he looked somewhat perplexed. I decided to leave Hugo be for the moment and enjoyed lively conversations with the guests invited by Marion, sitting on the bride's side as well.
Mom, why did you come? We have to get you to leave before the reception starts.
As the ceremony began and the bride and groom appeared in beautiful white attire, the venue burst into applause and cheers. I, too, found myself unusually excited by the sight of the couple's beauty, sending them applause as hearty as anyone else despite my aging body. When they stood before the priest and pledged their eternal love as a family, I was moved, remembering Walter as a small child and marveling at how he was now getting married. It was a moment that made me feel the passage of time. Surrounded by a large gathering of guests, they exchanged a kiss of commitment. I suddenly remembered my own wedding with Scott. Celebrated amidst many guests, a day so moving I couldn't stop my tears. And now, at Walter's wedding, I find myself unable to stop the flow of large tears. To experience this emotion again, this time at my grandchild's wedding, made me think that living a long life is indeed worth it. After the ceremony ended and the bride and groom had changed, the reception was about to start. Preparing for the reception, I went to the restroom before returning to the venue, but just before entering, I was stopped by Hugo. Without saying anything, Hugo pulled me into a family room and suddenly confronted me.
Why are you sitting on the bride's side? I told you right from the start that I was invited by Marion. How many times do you need me to say it before you're satisfied?
Our loud argument seemed to be heard outside, as Walter came into the room, knocking on the door. He stepped between us, calming an angry Hugo, and I explained the situation to him. Seeing Walter enter, and a few seconds after him, Marion joined as well. Walter and Marion, understanding everything, slowly and methodically explained to a calmed Hugo why I was there and why I was invited by the bride, sitting us down on the sofa. First, why I'm at Marion's wedding reception on her invitation is because I was Marion's middle school teacher. During her middle school years, Marion was going through a sensitive period, struggling with friendships and sometimes unable to attend school. As her teacher and as an individual, I was concerned for her. I visited her house several times to listen to her, calling out desperately through the door even if she wouldn't come out. Marion, who wouldn't respond to her family's questions, opened her heart only to me. Thanks to that, I was able to understand the cause of Marion's friendship troubles. It was a misunderstanding between them, and I helped them reconcile their friendship. Afterward, I helped Marion catch up with the studies she missed during her absences from school by tutoring her one-on-one after school hours, allowing her to successfully get into her desired high school. I vividly remember her saying to me at her high school graduation, tears in her eyes, "Miss Christiana, you saved my life." Even after that, Marion often sent me letters, seasonal greeting cards at the end of the year, and birthday cards, maintaining our exchange without meeting in person. I knew from her letters that she was in a relationship. Marion met Walter in the same international student team at university. They went on dates, sharing stories about school and their personal lives, gradually growing closer until they naturally became a couple. When Walter was deciding on the guest list for the wedding, he thought of inviting longtime friends, which is how my connection with Marion came to light. Walter had intended to invite me from the start, but was mistakenly informed by Hugo that I was too ill to attend the ceremony. However, Marion had sent the invitation to me before Walter did, and she had already received my RSVP to attend, which caused some confusion. However, I had felt uneasy knowing that Marion, who had sent an invitation to me before Walter did, had already received a confirmation of attendance. So, to greet and verify the facts, the two visited my house with a gift and discovered the true nature of their unease.
Was everything Dad said a lie? And to do such a thing on our own wedding day?
Walter, having heard the story from me, was furious and suggested a plan to teach him a lesson. For that purpose, I decided to attend as a guest on Marion's side, and we made it our secret not to reveal my attendance to anyone until the day of the event. Now, as we are here at the wedding, the time has come to execute what we have thought and decided.
Dad, I'm sorry, but the talk about living together after getting married is off the table now.
We've decided to live with Granny. Walter expressed his intention to Hugo to cancel the planned cohabitation with his parents and instead live with me.
Granny is a very important benefactor to Marion. Why do you act so high and mighty, threatening not to come to the wedding and disregarding such a person?
I'm sorry to Hugo, but Christiana is a lifesaver to me. Without Christiana, I wouldn't have met Walter. I would have remained in a hopeless situation. Granny is more important to us than you, Dad, and the others. That's why we decided to live with Granny instead of you. Hugo was speechless and overwhelmed by Walter and Marion's unexpected declaration.
Walter, why would you say something like that? If you live with Mom, the two of you will have to take care of her. Are you sure about that?
It's not just that Dad doesn't want to live with Granny, right? You don't want to take care of her yourself, and on top of that, you think Granny has no money because you gave me some. It seems Walter's words were indeed true. As Walter lectured, Hugo's face became flushed, and his irritation became evident.
Such a thing is impossible. Me, your father, to suggest that I live relying on you guys. No, Dad, that's exactly what's happening right now. I can't live with someone like that, and I don't want to. I don't want our happy marital life to be intruded upon by someone like you, Dad.
We choose Ms. Christiana, who is more of a benefactor to us than Hugo. Hugo, with a selfish mindset of not wanting to lower his current standard of living, attempted to persuade Walter and the others. In reality, Walter and Marion had secured jobs at a foreign corporation through connections made while studying abroad. The foreign corporation offered very good salaries. After getting married, they planned to live in a spacious high-rise apartment in the city center and eventually build a large house back in their hometown. The reason Hugo and his spouse were so eager to live with Walter's family was targeted at these assets. Walter believed it was natural for a son to take care of his parents, but if a father couldn't do the same for his own parents, he declared he wouldn't take care of Dad either.
I'm sorry. Walter, my bad. So please, don't abandon me. Mom, I'm sorry. I was a fool. It was all my fault. I apologize.
It seems Hugo realized from the strong feelings of Walter's family. Family must be cherished. If not, one will be abandoned by their own family and will not be able to lead a decent life. Feeling this, being made to realize this, Hugo desperately apologized to me and Walter. But, of course, Hugo's apology meant only to protect himself, held no meaning, and not just to me, but to his own son. Please say no more. Walter quietly refused Hugo's plea for forgiveness and said nothing more. However, his expression conveyed a wish that he no longer show an embarrassing side as a father. Seeing his face, Hugo understood everything and without saying anything further, just lowered his head, leaving all decisions to Walter. The issue with Hugo was temporarily resolved, and it was discussed that the upcoming reception should carry on as if nothing had happened, not wanting to spoil the atmosphere of the venue or the mood of the guests. We want this wedding to be something special. Despite everything, we want it to end with smiles. So, please. And I'm asking too. I want the ceremony to be a success no matter what. So, I want us to welcome the reception with smiles. Please, help us. Touched by Walter and Marion's earnest request, I agreed to their proposal and promised to act as if nothing had happened at the reception to avoid confusing the guests. The reception went smoothly, and Hugo sat quietly on the groom's side, watching the couple in their new outfits being celebrated by the guests around them. Various events were prepared for the reception, and the Walter couple enjoyed them while moving through the program. Finally, they walked down the aisle prepared outside, and Marion, the bride, performed the bouquet toss.
Here it goes. Catch!
The pink bouquet flew through the air, drawing a beautiful arc, and somehow it reached me. I haven't held a bouquet since my own wedding, decades ago. Is the wedding god suggesting I find someone other than my late Scott now?
Miss Christiana! Amazing! I really shouldn't be keeping this.
As I attempted to return the bouquet to Marion, she quietly grasped my hand to stop me, indicating her agreement. Please keep it, Miss Christiana. With this, you can be happy with Scott forever. And if you keep it, it feels like we will be happy too. Marion's words gently touched my heart, and tears welled up in my eyes. Moved by my tears, Marion, and surprisingly Walter too, had tears in their eyes, creating a peculiar scene where only the bride, groom, and I were crying, observed by the surrounding guests. The ceremony continued with laughter and tears and concluded successfully with the departure of the bride and groom. Following the ceremony, as I had promised Hugo, Walter and Marion started living with me in their new home.
Are you sure about this? It's your new home and your newlyweds. Won't I be in the way of your married life? Not at all. We decided this together, and living with you, Miss Christiana, is like a dream come true.
Marion answered brightly and innocently, and Walter, who had just returned to the living room from unpacking, added with a smile. Granny is our benefactor. If Granny hadn't provided the money for my studies, I wouldn't be where I am today, and this marriage wouldn't have happened. I'm truly grateful. Receiving heartfelt thanks from the two I've known for so long made my eyes well up, perhaps due to my age. I hadn't felt so happy to receive words of gratitude since my late Scott told me on our first wedding anniversary. Thank you for marrying me. Ever since. Perhaps, when my time comes, I will remember Scott and these two. I'm so glad they've grown into such kind-hearted individuals. It feels as if their happiness is my own. And now, Dad has also promised to send monthly allowances to Granny and help with daily life, showing his remorse. It finally feels like everything has turned out well. Since the wedding, Walter had been intentionally avoiding contact with Hugo and his wife. However, fearing that he might be completely abandoned, Hugo promised to send money every month and assist with living expenses to maintain their relationship. Still, he prepared a somewhat forceful measure, warning that if something happened to me when he wasn't looking, he would completely sever ties. May I also say something? Both of you, thank you for growing up so splendidly since those days. Thank you for thinking so much of me. Truly, thank you. I couldn't help but hug them both. Overwhelmed with joy, I hugged them a bit too tightly without realizing it. In response to their gestures, I hugged them back tenderly, feeling a breeze of happiness flow through our new home, still dotted with cardboard boxes. I've made a certain decision about living with these two. I'm going to be a powerful granny. Living so robustly that I won't need any care, not touching the money sent to me, but secretly saving it for my great-grandchildren to use one day. And I plan to live long enough to see my great-grandchildren grow up and marry someone special, just like these two.
Stop leeching off me already!
For over 2 decades, I thought I was giving my all to William. Yet, this is how he sees me? I wasn't leeching off him. I was just devoted to you. That's what I thought, but the words wouldn't come. As my strength drained away, William continued. Now that Daniel's working, you've got no reason to leech off me anymore.
But... shut up. I don't want to hear your excuses.
William raised his voice. It's over. My feelings never reached him. Just as I realized that, I heard something snap inside me. It was the sound of the thread of love that had been connecting our hearts, snapping. At the same time, my feelings for William began to fade. We were spouses just moments ago, but now, we're like strangers. William was just using me all along. He never loved me. Otherwise, he wouldn't brazenly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. The only option left is to completely crush him. I've made up my mind. I lifted my face and gazed at William. My name is Susan, I'm 50 years old. I've been married to my husband William for 25 years. Our son Daniel, born a few years after we got married, graduated from college and started working this year. Child rearing is done, and now I can do what I want. That's what I'm thinking right now. But there's just one problem. That's my relationship with William. William is not a good husband or father. In fact, it's hard to find anything good about him. He cheats, and he doesn't even give me a proper salary. I at least want you to give me enough money for living expenses. Huh? Don't get cocky when you're living off me. William always snaps back like this. I guess it's hopeless. Maybe divorce is the only option. Lately, I've been thinking about it more and more. But I can't just say I want a divorce easily. The reason is, my FIL Stephen, who is sick and hospitalized, asked me to take care of William. I owe Stephen, and as long as I can bear it, I have to endure it, don't I? I can't ignore Stephen's words, but my desire to divorce is strong. Caught between these conflicting feelings, I find myself reminiscing about the happier times before marriage. Ironically, that happiness began with a misfortune that befell my father. Our family ran a small restaurant. My father was in charge of cooking, and my mother managed the hall. Needless to say, the food was delicious. However, my father was incredibly bad at business. He started the restaurant with the desire to fill his customers' bellies with delicious food. That's a noble sentiment, I believe. But that sentiment alone drove his business. So, he hardly thought about profit. It didn't matter if the profit was small. As long as the customers were satisfied, that was enough for him. Obviously, this was no way to make a profit. As a result, our family's finances were always on the edge. Yet, seeing the satisfied customers, I felt proud, even as a child. So, I never interfered with my father's business. But during my college years, a crisis struck. The company supplying ingredients to my father's restaurant went bankrupt due to the recession. We had already paid for this month's supply, but now, we faced the prospect of closing the restaurant. Our management was already barely scraping by. There was no extra money to spare. Seeing my parents disheartened made me anxious too. But as a college student, there wasn't much I could do. Nor did it seem likely that the bankrupt company would refund us. The only option left for us was to close the restaurant. That's when a regular customer said, "Closing down? But the food is so good. What a waste."
But the supplier has gone bankrupt, and we're likely to be saddled with debt.
Then let me support you personally.
Use it to revive the restaurant.
The regular, true to his word, lent my father the money.
We appreciate it. We'll definitely pay you back.
Don't worry about the money for now. Just keep making delicious meals. After saying that, the man quickly left the restaurant. Later, my father started dealing with a different food company. The regular was apparently involved in a large-scale food distribution business, and we got our supplies at a cheaper rate than before. Fortuitously, our family's restaurant was saved from bankruptcy. About a year later, I went with my father to repay the money to the regular customer. While my father was talking to the man, a young man approached me. "So you borrowed money from my father?" It turned out, he was the son of the man who lent us the money. His name was William, and he worked in his father's company.
You're pretty. How about going out with me?
Me, with you?
Come on, think of it as a way to say thanks for the loan.
We were indeed saved by the loan, and my father had properly expressed our gratitude. I didn't think we owed anything more, but then William whispered to me,
"I could spread rumors that the restaurant's daughter is ungrateful."
That would be. I couldn't talk back. I thought it wouldn't affect me even if he spread rumors, but it could cause trouble for my father. And what would the restaurant's customers think? With these thoughts, I found myself unable to refuse William's offer. I didn't like it, but I decided to endure it, just this once. While pondering all this, I went out with William. But once we were out, it was more enjoyable than I expected. William was entertaining, knew various fun spots, and had a great taste in choosing places. Despite the terrible first impression, he might actually be a decent person. Thinking that was my mistake, I was swiftly wrapped around William's finger. Being with Susan is fun.
I'm having fun too.
With a nice girl like you, I'm thinking for the first time I could marry. Swept up by such simple words, I started dating William with a view of marriage. William continued to manipulate me in various ways. Eventually, a few years later, I found myself married to William. Of course, I never imagined then that it was all William's trap. He was kind and I felt loved by William. But it was all a lie. As soon as we got married, William showed his true colors. "Here's this month's salary. Manage it well." Opening the envelope William handed me, I found a handwritten salary slip. The salary itself was deposited into the bank, so a slip alone wasn't odd. But it was strange that the salary slip was handwritten. Nowadays, handwritten documents are almost unheard of, but when I got married, it was 25 years ago. It was a time when computers were just beginning to become commonplace, and handwritten salary slips didn't seem out of place.
"There's more than $1,000, it seems enough,"
I muttered to myself, trying to be convinced. I managed somehow with that modest amount of money. As married life went on, I started to feel something was off. It was William's lifestyle. William left home at a fixed time every morning, but his return was always erratic. It varied daily. I'm busy with various tasks as my dad's successor. Then, at least let me know before you come home.
Stop nagging, I get it. I'll call.
William shouted. His attitude made me feel even more uneasy. Maybe he's out having fun. Perhaps there's someone else. Though I suspected, I couldn't confront him because I disliked being yelled at. In the end, I couldn't voice my doubts about William's behavior. Then Daniel was born. I thought things might change with a child. But William's attitude remained unchanged. Looking back, I think that's when it started. I began to vaguely consider divorce. And it was around the time Daniel started middle school. I received a call from my mother while I was out shopping for dinner.
What? Dad's hospitalized?
It was news that my father was admitted to the hospital. I rushed to the hospital. Mom's just making a big deal on the phone, my father said, laughing heartily. I was relieved. But at that moment, I remembered something and my heart skipped a beat. I made a mistake. I hadn't contacted William. By then, it was too late. My mobile phone was flooded with calls from William. Panicking, I called back, only to hear William's irritated voice.
Where the hell are you and what are you doing? Get back here and make my dinner. I'm sorry, Dad is... What? Dad? Your father?
William's tone was stern as he questioned me. I answered in a small voice. Yes, he was suddenly hospitalized.
Your father doesn't matter. You're my wife.
Startled by William's loud voice, I closed my eyes. I was terrified of his shouting, but I knew I had to stand up for myself. I gathered my courage and retorted. Is it wrong to be worried about my dad? That should be allowed, right?
Shut up. Don't talk back to me.
No, I will say this. You would rush to your own father, wouldn't you? William fell silent when I asked that. I thought it would hit close to home. But his reply was unimaginable.
Huh? I'd ignore it if my dad was hospitalized. After all, I wouldn't be troubled if he wasn't around.
I was speechless. That had to be a lie. But I couldn't deny it. After much hesitation, I told William. I'm different from you. Sorry, but you'll have to eat out tonight. That was all I could muster. I hung up the phone, still in a daze. Since that incident, I truly couldn't believe in William anymore. It was then I realized that the happy times before marriage were all an illusion.
Oh, I see. William didn't want a wife, he wanted a maid.
Saying it out loud made me sad. But I couldn't just dwell on the sadness. If I was going to divorce, I needed to prepare. I started preparing for a divorce. Years passed. And then Stephen was hospitalized. His condition was quite serious. He might not be able to leave the hospital. I relayed Stephen's medical condition to William, but he was unfazed. Does that mean it's going to cost money? It's not the time to worry about money, don't you understand? I understand. I'll contact my brother Donald. William reached out to Donald, my brother-in-law. Donald was married but had no children. So William asked if Donald could help with the hospital bills. Can you pay? It's tough for us, with Daniel and Susan and all. His attitude was as if it was someone else's problem. It reminded me of when my own father was hospitalized. It was clear he didn't care about Stephen at all. I couldn't bear it anymore. Enough. I'll manage somehow and pay for Stephen's hospital bills.
Don't forget what you just said.
William shouted. I nodded firmly. Ultimately, my declaration led to our family bearing the cost of Stephen's hospital bills. Moreover, Stephen stepped down from his position as president due to his illness. And William took over. Regardless, William didn't like that I had stood up to him. Since then, he started blatantly not coming home. Even when discussing Daniel's future plans. William ignored my calls and didn't come home. Dad's not coming home again today. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm causing you trouble. It's fine, I don't care about Dad. More importantly, I want to go to college in Boston. That's right. Don't worry about tuition, I'll manage somehow. Soon after, Daniel's admission to a college in Boston was secured. As expected, William didn't see Daniel off. Once Daniel moved to Boston, the house became eerily quiet. By then, William's visits had dwindled to about once a week. There's also Stephen's hospital bills. Could you transfer a little more? What? I've already transferred more than half of my salary. It should be enough for you now. The money William transferred was meager. It was clearly just a fraction of his salary. The claim of transferring more than half was undoubtedly a lie. I knew that. But I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. Years passed, and I got news that Daniel had landed a job. With Daniel employed, it might be time to bring up divorce. Over these years, I had prepared for divorce. Now, it's just about the right timing. Where and when can I bring it up to avoid arguments? Such thoughts kept haunting me. It's not about arguments, though. I chuckled wryly to myself. Then, one day, I had been visiting Stephen at the hospital. After chatting about trivial things, I headed back home as usual. As I tried to unlock the door, I was shocked. For some reason, the door was already open. Could it be a burglar? I cautiously peeked inside. From the living room, I could hear the TV and William's laughter. Relieved that William was home, I entered the living room. There, William was watching TV and laughing heartily. You're home. Yeah, I was thinking of tidying up. Tidying up? Heeding William's words, I looked around. On closer inspection, some items in the room were missing. It seems like something's missing. Yeah, I threw it away. Your stuff. My stuff? Stunned, I went back to my room. The room was silent, the computer, TV, even my favorite cup were gone. Not just that, the bed and everything else had disappeared. What's the meaning of this? I threw it out because we don't need it anymore.
Don't need it anymore? What are we supposed to do now?
As I raised my voice, William frowned. Then he averted his gaze and sighed. Frankly, I'm tired of supporting you.
What are you talking about? I'm your wife.
As I retorted, William grimaced and suddenly raised his voice.
Do I have to spell it out for you? Stop leeching off me.
For over 2 decades, I thought I was giving my all to William. Yet, this is how he sees me? I'm not leeching off you. I was just devoted to you. I thought that, but the words wouldn't come. As my strength drained away, William continued. Now that Daniel is working, you've got no reason to leech off me anymore.
But... Shut up! I don't want to hear your excuses.
William raised his voice. It's no use. My feelings never reached him. At that moment, I heard something snap inside me. It was the sound of the thread of love that had been connecting our hearts, snapping. At the same time, my feelings for William began to fade. Moments ago, we were a couple, but now we're like strangers. William had been using me all along. He never loved me. Otherwise, he wouldn't brazenly cheat and try to drive me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. The only option left is to completely crush him. Resolved, I looked up and faced William. What? Got a complaint? No. If you want me to leave, I will. I briskly closed the living room door behind me and headed to my room. But there was nothing of mine left. Not a single piece of my clothing remained. Don't bother looking. I had the garbage collection service take it all. Which service? There's a flyer here. That one. I picked up the service's flyer from the floor. As I dialed the number, I told William. You'll regret this. Leaving those words behind, I immediately left the house. The call connected right away. I explained the situation, and the person on the line understood immediately. It seemed William's actions had already raised suspicions. So, the garbage collection service had kept everything as it was. I'll be there right away. Thank you. I thanked them politely and ended the call. Afterward, I went to the services place. After expressing my gratitude, I had my belongings moved to a newly rented storage unit. Relieved that my possessions were safe. I don't think getting away with something like this comes without a price. I clenched my teeth and called Daniel. After briefly explaining the situation, I ended with, "So, I've decided to move out, considering a divorce. Daniel, please be prepared for that. All right? Got it. Bye." Daniel hung up. He seemed scared of me. Was I that angry? Puzzled, I put my mobile phone in my bag and headed to a nearby hotel. I already had a new place lined up. The reason was simple. I had been planning to discuss divorce with William soon. Divorce and move there. That was my plan for starting a new life. The schedule just moved up a bit. So honestly, I wasn't troubled. It's just that plans have moved forward by about 2 weeks. 2 weeks of hotel living. What a waste. A bad habit of a housewife, thinking about waste. I wonder if I should bill him for the hotel expenses. Either way, be prepared, William. I muttered and then started working on the post-divorce actions I had planned in advance. Around 10 days into my hotel stay, William called. He raised his voice as soon as I answered.
You took my money.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. It's about Dad's hospital bills. The hospital just called asking for payment.
Oh, that. While thinking, I sighed and responded. You should pay it. It's no longer my concern after being kicked out.
I've been transferring living expenses to you. That's supposed to cover it.
Yes, but where's that bank account? Isn't it with you now? I retorted nonchalantly. But that account was empty. I couldn't help but laugh, knowing that.
There's an account, but it's empty. That's why I'm saying you took the money.
I haven't taken anything.
Don't lie. Who else could use it?
Didn't he realize how little he had transferred? I retorted, almost in disbelief. It was just too little to begin with. If there's no money for the hospital bills, why don't you use your allowance?
Allowance?
William started to panic, evidently thinking I didn't know. Since the beginning of our marriage, William had been giving me handwritten salary slips. That was to hide the fact that he was skimming part of his salary. In other words, the skimmed money was William's allowance. I asked Stephen once, how much is William's salary?
So, what about it?
He looked puzzled but told me. So, I know you've been taking money. When I confronted him, William fell silent. After a long pause, so long I thought the call had dropped, William suddenly raised his voice.
What's wrong with me spending the money I earned? It's your fault for spending all the money I gave you.
Uh-huh. And then?
We're getting a divorce. I'll demand alimony. And you'll return the money you've squandered.
William blurted that out, and I smiled triumphantly. I had caught him in his own words. Now William couldn't escape. I was smiling as I retorted to him. I appreciate that. I wanted a divorce too. Come over to discuss it.
No,
I want the divorce too. I'll be waiting with evidence of your infidelity. Though I couldn't see him, I imagined William's face turning pale. It was evident in his shaky voice.
What infidelity evidence?
Pretending won't help. I have photographic evidence.
Photographic evidence?
I could almost see William stuttering. Holding back laughter, I continued. I'll give you the address, so let's meet there next Sunday to talk in detail. I unilaterally gave him an address and hung up the phone. I had successfully confronted him with divorce. Now, if I could make him apologize. Honestly, that would be the hardest part. I braced myself for it. Then, on the agreed Sunday, I was at the meeting place well before the scheduled time. I think he should be arriving soon. I glanced around and soon saw William. Over here. I called out to William and he looked up in surprise.
Here?
Yes. I gave you the address, remember?
No, but this place, whose mansion is it?
William looked past me. There stood a mansion worth about $1 million. Much larger than an ordinary house, it boasted a vast garden. And was 3 stories high, complete with a home theater. Luxury cars were parked in the built-in garage. Pointing at the mansion, I smiled. This is my house. It's newly built, so it's pretty nice, right?
Your house?
Yes. I was planning to live here after the divorce, so I started building it a little while ago. Yes. The place I had summoned William to was my newly built house. Naturally, William, who had always seen me as just a housewife, was dumbfounded. Pushing such a William from behind, I entered the house. I led William to the living room.
Shall we discuss then? This is my lawyer.
I introduced my lawyer, who was waiting inside. But William was hardly in a state to pay attention. His gaze was unsettled, constantly scanning the surroundings. He didn't even try to look at the photos of his infidelity laid out on the table. He didn't respond when spoken to. Frankly, it was hardly a conversation. Eventually, William murmured in a low voice.
How did you afford a house like this?
Although I was amused by his curiosity, I answered. I bought it normally.
Liar! A housewife can't afford something like this.
To buy a $1 million house, one would need an annual income of around $150,000. However, I had that much income. So, I confidently replied. I earn that much. Do you have a problem with that?
No, but how did you?
I kind of helped out at a friend's company, and before I knew it, things turned out this way. The story goes back a few years. When I had decided to divorce due to the trouble over my father's hospitalization, I started preparing for it, beginning with finding a job. After the divorce, I couldn't survive without a job. So, I started looking for a job that would allow me to live independently. But there weren't any good ones. That's when I consulted my best friend, Lisa.
Why don't you help me with my work?
What work do you do?
Aquaculture on land.
Land-based aquaculture involves artificially creating facilities like pools and breeding fish in them. Despite some disadvantages, it's an eco-friendly method that prevents marine pollution. Lisa's father started it, and now Lisa was taking it over. So, I started working there. William asked tentatively. Once I started helping out, the business suddenly began doing well. What I did was mainly negotiations and administrative work. But Lisa said I was a big help. And I was promoted to an executive position. It was all coincidental, but I believe luck is part of one's ability. Listening to my story, William looked downcast. After a moment of thought, he suddenly looked up. Let's forget the divorce talk. How about we start over? As he spoke, I looked at him coldly and replied. Stop joking. No, it's not a joke, I really want to start over with you. William only wanted my money. So, I raised an eyebrow and retorted. I dislike people who cheat. And those who neglect Stephen.
No, about Dad.
Quiet. You may not know, but I paid for your father's hospital bills. The money William had given me was indeed very little. After paying for groceries, high utility bills, and other miscellaneous expenses, nothing was left. That was all he ever gave. Naturally, there was no way it could cover Stephen's hospital bills. Initially, I managed somehow, but after starting my job, I paid the bills with my own salary. Despite that, you wouldn't listen to me, and you never visited Stephen.
That's because, well,
how can I trust someone like that? As I raised my voice, William looked down. Then, the lawyer proceeded with the discussion about alimony. William was speechless. He remained silent and downcast until the end. Urged by the lawyer, William eventually signed the divorce papers. The alimony was set at $30,000. Now that we are divorced, you'll be responsible for your father's hospital bills. Understood. William nodded reluctantly. At least he didn't argue. I was relieved. Finally, I made sure William left, practically chasing him out. It was over at last. The only regret was that I didn't get an apology from William, but I had one last move. That would make him apologize. I couldn't help but smile at the thought. A few days later, after visiting the company, I was called from behind on my way home.
Hey, Susan!
I turned around to see William. Don't call me like we're familiar. We're divorced now.
Shut up! What the hell did you do?
William was looking at me with a flushed face. I realized what this was about. Ah, so that was the talk at the company. With that in mind, I said to him with a smile, "What do you think I did?"
Don't mess with me. Tell me how you got me fired.
William's outburst was amusing, and I couldn't help but smile. It's your responsibility. You got fired as a consequence for having an affair with the company's clerk. William's affair was with a clerk at his own company. He had been doing as he pleased, thinking he was untouchable as the president. After the divorce was settled, I reported the affair to Stephen. Stephen was furious about William's actions, while also saddened by our divorce. I showed Stephen the evidence photos of the affair, which enraged him further. Then, Stephen made an unexpected offer. I'm going to transfer all my company shares to you, Susan. To me? Wouldn't Donald? No, I want to give them to you. Use them to dethrone William from his position. Stephen explained the situation. His company was a corporation, requiring shareholder meetings or board resolutions for key decisions. Of course, decisions can also be made through board resolutions. However, it wasn't a large company. Stephen owned most of the issued shares. This meant he could make decisions as a single shareholder. In smaller companies, it's common for the president to own the majority of shares. So, by inheriting Stephen's shares, I could exercise voting rights on my own. But it wasn't me who decided to fire William. I informed Donald about acquiring the shares, and just reported William's affair. The rest was Donald's decision. Donald was considerate.
That guy! Why is he doing what you say?
It's not about doing what I say. He made the decision for the company's best interest. Hearing this, William collapsed on the spot. Then he began to plead, clinging desperately.
I was wrong. I apologize, please forgive me. Without a job, I'll be on the streets.
But that's not my concern. It's all his responsibility. I won't forgive you even if you apologize.
Please, I'm begging you. Forgive me.
William repeatedly offered deep apologies right there. I turned away. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do.
Why not? If you have the shares.
I sold them to Donald and his wife. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. At that moment, I heard William's loud voice. Of course, I pretended not to hear and walked away. After being ousted as the president, William had to leave the company. He might have stayed if he were an employee, but William had joined the company through Stephen's connections and had always been arrogant.
I'd never be just an employee.
He used to boast. So, as soon as he was removed from his position, he was kicked out. Now he's working a part-time job at a grocery store, but re-employment at his age will be difficult. He's likely to spend his later years in poverty, filled with intense regret. As for me, after the divorce, I became more dedicated to my work. While I don't think I'll remarry, I have several male colleagues. Spring might come again. It was then when I had these thoughts. I received a call from Daniel. I'm bringing my girlfriend over next time. That's wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. I failed in my marriage, but I don't want Daniel to experience the same. But he'll be fine. Daniel is much more sensible than I was. I'm sorry, but you can't make a withdrawal.
What?
It seems there's only about $1 in your bank account.
Wait, there's got to be a mistake.
How did it come to this? I was trying to withdraw money from my bank account for my son, Mike's tuition fees. Then I received a call from the credit card company.
Hello? We're seeing a charge of $30,000 here. What?
I exclaimed louder than before. Other customers in the vicinity turned to look, wondering what was going on.
Ma'am? Can you give me a moment? I need to check something.
I had a suspicion. After hanging up, I called someone else.
Did you use my credit card?
Yeah, about that. My parents wanted a new car, so I bought it for them in full. My husband Dylan, unapologetically laughing over the phone. All the savings for Mike's education.
Do you even realize what that money was for?
Come on, don't make such a fuss.
It's not like it was for anything important.
Hearing those words, something inside me broke.
You better be responsible for your own words. What? It's your fault for leaving your credit card around like that. Don't joke. Even if it's for your parents, you can't just recklessly spend like that. You have no right to tell me that.
Realizing arguing was futile, I decided on a final course of action.
Fine. Hey, wait a sec.
I hung up and immediately called the police. Dylan had to face the consequences. There was no way I could forgive him. I'm Emily. 45 years old, working in sales at a cosmetics company. My family consists of my husband Dylan and our 18-year-old son Mike. Our relationship started through work and evolved from there.
Emily, do you plan to get married in the future? What? Where has this come from?
I was just thinking, since you're so beautiful. If we're talking about looks, Dylan, you're quite handsome yourself. Oh, come on. We were both 26, thinking about marriage. Such conversations became frequent, and before we knew it, we were dating. A year later, we got married. Dylan wanted me to be a housewife after marriage, but I wanted to continue working.
Since I'm going to keep working, how about we just merge our bank accounts? That might get confusing. Let's keep them separate. Really?
Well, I'll be the breadwinner, paying rent and groceries. You can handle the savings.
Okay then.
Living together revealed aspects of Dylan I hadn't noticed before. Discussing it with friends, they said it's often the case, which somewhat reassured me. Things were going well after that, so I didn't say anything too strongly to Dylan. Things went on like this until Mike was born a year into our marriage.
We really need to cut back on unnecessary expenses now that we have a child.
I was on maternity leave and decided to talk to Dylan when he got back from work. I thought that if I talked to him, he would understand.
You think I'm wasting money? I should be able to spend as I like sometimes. Of course, but my worry is that you're overspending. Ugh.
Dylan sighed, looking annoyed. I was worried if we were okay, being this way so early in our marriage. But the problem didn't solve itself as time went by. And the issues weren't just with Dylan.
My parents are coming over to visit soon. What? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Sorry, I totally forgot.
This was just the beginning. I was constantly being put in difficult situations by Dylan and my in-laws. And then, the following Saturday, my in-laws arrived. Hello, Emily. Long time no see. Please come in. Don't mind if I do. At first glance, the parents-in-law seemed quite caring, and to others, there seemed to be no issues. However, perhaps more like a parent and child, they were lax about managing money.
How about we go shopping today, since it's a special occasion? Shopping? Yes. There's something I've been wanting for a long time.
But since Mike was in a bad mood and wouldn't stop crying no matter what, I ended up staying home.
All right, I'm counting on you to house sit.
With that, Dylan left with the parents-in-law. When they returned about 2 hours later, I was surprised to see them.
What's with all those bags in your hands? Oh, these? Yeah, I guess I bought too much.
Moreover, the bags were printed with logos of famous brands.
We're back. Sorry for making you house sit. Oh, no, it's okay.
Mother-in-law Rebecca was also carrying bags similar to Dylan's. Then, sitting on the sofa, she started spreading out her purchases as if to show them off to me. I didn't own that much myself. Moreover, since getting married, I've been trying to save money, keeping the future in mind.
Thank you for today. I can't believe you bought me so much.
It's nothing to worry about. It's just filial piety. Plus, I got a lot too. Watching this exchange was almost headache-inducing.
Oh, right. This is for Mike.
Saying this, Dylan pulled out a piece of baby clothing from a brand.
We had to make you house sit, after all.
Father-in-law Bert said with a laugh. I had hoped they might have bought something for me too, but there was nothing, and Dylan and his parents seemed satisfied looking at their own things. The day ended with a family dinner and we said goodbyes, but there was another chance to meet the in-laws at a family gathering. Welcome. Thank you for having us today. Even I, who wasn't much interested in brands, could tell Rebecca was dressed head to toe in brand name clothes. You always seem so plain. This was said while we were drinking coffee in the living room. From the moment she arrived, Rebecca had been looking at me, and this was why.
I've been meaning to say this, but you need to take care of your appearance more.
Then Dylan joined the conversation.
What are you talking about?
About Emily being plain. Oh, that.
Yeah, I've been meaning to say same.
The reason for my plain appearance was because I had more important things to worry about than my own looks. Dylan freely spent money, but I was the one covering the costs from our savings. He didn't realize that our current lifestyle was thanks to that. During my 2-day stay at my in-laws, I had to put up with Rebecca's sarcasm the whole entire time. And upon returning home, Dylan started it with my appearance again.
Like Mom said at home earlier, you should take more care of your appearance. It's embarrassing for me too.
Unable to bear it any longer, I vented all my pent-up frustrations.
If you're embarrassed, then think a bit more about how you spend money. I've been saying this for a long time. Are we going to have that talk again? I'm tired of hearing it. Tired of hearing it? With Mike growing older, are you planning to keep living like this? Life is going on just fine, isn't it?
Dylan laughed and headed to the bedroom. Life went on like this, and before we knew it, Mike had become a junior in high school. Then, one summer afternoon, Dylan came up to me.
I have something I want to discuss.
Dylan wanting to discuss something was a bad omen. And as expected, my fears were confirmed.
A discussion? Sort out your money issues yourself.
Haven't said anything yet, have I? Can you pay for some living expenses instead? Had Dylan not listened to me at all? I was so astounded I didn't want to talk anymore.
By the way, what are you short on? What I'm short on? Everything. Everything? It hasn't even been a week since payday. Just help me out, okay?
Dylan didn't seem to feel any remorse towards me. Reluctantly, I convinced myself it was necessary for our livelihood. This is the last time, okay?
Yeah.
Even though we were still talking, Dylan was looking at his mobile phone, seemingly bored. And that wasn't all.
I'm going out for a bit. Wait. Where are you going? Don't need to tell you. I'll be back by night.
And then Dylan left the house. I was left alone in the living room, stunned. Honestly, I've considered divorce more than once or twice. But I didn't because of Mike. While I was thinking about this, Mike came.
Huh? Where's Dad?
He just went out.
Maybe he's gone to buy something again? You think so too?
Whenever Dylan went out alone without saying where he was going, he invariably ended up buying unnecessary things. As I sighed, Mike made a suggestion.
Why don't you just let it go? What?
I've been watching all this time, and it's clearly too much.
But you're still here. I can't do something so irresponsible. That's why I'm saying, once I graduate from college, I'll leave this house to work. Then, Mom, you can be free to do what you want.
Thank you. For Mike, who had been watching Dylan's reckless behavior, it must have been too much to tolerate. Mike's words were a relief to me. He was my son and we were a team. Dylan returned before dinner, as expected, with luxury items. If there was money to buy such things, it should be used for living expenses. I was too tired to even complain to Dylan. No matter what I said, he wouldn't listen and would do as he pleased. Sometime after I had covered Dylan's expenses.
Here. What's this? This is to cover what you paid for me the other day.
Saying that, Dylan handed me an envelope. Inside, there was money. Oh, thank you. I hadn't expected him to repay me so soon. When I checked the amount, it was $1,000. It wasn't enough to cover what I paid, but I still felt a little happy. But that brief joy soon turned into a nightmare.
All right, I'm taking this back. Hey, what are you doing?
Dylan snatched the envelope back from me and put it in his pocket.
I did pay you back, right?
I'll need it for tomorrow.
I don't understand what you're doing.
I was confused about what was happening. While I was in panic, Dylan continued.
Why are you surprised?
Look. Then Dylan handed me the envelope again, only to take it back. He repeated this a few times.
So, now I've paid back everything I owe you.
I had no energy left to argue back. It was like a child's way of pretending everything was settled.
If that's what you think, I won't lend you money again. Why does it come to that? I paid you back, didn't I? Forget it.
From that day, I grew to dislike even talking to Dylan. Whenever he asked for something, it was always about money. Even more troublesome were the in-laws. I thought they had been quiet lately, but then suddenly they contacted me.
We haven't received this month's allowance.
What?
Allowance? I haven't heard anything about it. That can't be. Dylan said you would start paying from this month.
It's too sudden. I can't.
We're in trouble too. We have payments to make. It's your problem, so sort it out. I need it by the day after tomorrow. Wait a minute, Rebecca.
She said what she wanted to say and just hung up. I was constantly troubled by this family. Just thinking about it gave me a headache. That night, I asked Dylan what was going on.
Rebecca called, but what's this about an allowance? They seemed a bit troubled, so I've been sending them money for a while. But why should I pay? I haven't heard anything about it. Oh, did I forget to mention? And you even told Rebecca that I would be making the deposit. Then just send the allowance.
However, I decided not to send the allowance. Nor did I contact the in-laws, ignoring whatever they said. Mike's exams were approaching, and I couldn't afford to focus on such things. Time passed, and Mike got accepted to his first choice of college.
Congratulations! You've been working hard for this. The real challenge starts now. Say something to him.
Well done. That was the only thing Dylan said without even looking at Mike.
Wait a minute.
I tried to say something to Dylan, but Mike stopped me. I guess Mike didn't have much expectation from Dylan either. Then trouble came when I went to the bank to pay Mike's tuition. When my number was called and I approached the counter, an unexpected incident occurred.
I'm sorry, but you cannot make a withdrawal. What? It seems there is only $1 in your bank account. Wait, there's got to be a mistake.
How did it come to this? I was just trying to withdraw money from the bank account for Mike's tuition payment. Then, a call came from the credit card company.
Hello? We have noticed some unfamiliar usage on your credit card. Do you have any idea about this? That can't be right. It has to be a mistake. We have a record of the usage. There's a $30,000 charge on your account. What?
I exclaimed louder than before. Other customers in the bank turned to look at me.
Ma'am? Sorry, could you give me a moment? I need to check something.
Understood. I had one suspicion in mind. I hung up and called someone.
Where are you now?
At home. Why are you so panicky?
Did you use my credit card?
There was a brief silence. Yeah, that. My parents wanted a new car, so I bought it for them in one go. Dylan laughed over the phone, without any sign of remorse. All the money I had saved for Mike's education.
Do you even realize what that money was for?
Come on, don't make such a fuss. It couldn't have been for anything important. Hearing those words, something inside me crumbled.
You better be responsible for your own words. What? Responsible? It's your fault for leaving your credit card out. Don't joke around. Even if it's for your parents, do you realize how stupid this is? I don't need to be lectured by you.
I realized it was futile to argue with Dylan. I decided to take the final step.
Fine then. Hey, wait.
I hung up the phone immediately and then contacted the police. Dylan would have to face the consequences. No matter what, I couldn't forgive this. When I got back home, I confronted Dylan.
You better pay back every penny you used without permission.
Sorry, I'm a bit busy right now.
What?
Dylan was getting ready to leave.
I told you I bought a car, right? They're treating me to dinner today. Is this really the time for that? We're not done talking yet.
Then we can talk when I get back. I'll be late if I stay now. Ignoring my attempts to stop him, Dylan was about to leave when I told him about notifying the police.
I just called the police.
He stopped in his tracks.
What did you say? Did I hear something about the police? It's not your imagination. What the hell did you do? It's obvious, isn't it? You used my credit card without permission. Taking someone's money like that is theft. Your money is mine too. I just used it. And now you're calling the police. What are you thinking? Anyways, pay back the full amount. And make sure you apologize to Mike too. Apologize? Why? Mike has nothing to do with this.
I sighed. Using the money for his own desires was just unbelievable.
That money you used was saved for Mike's entrance fees and tuition. But thanks to you, we can't even pay that now. Why didn't you tell me sooner? How could I expect you to do something this foolish?
Then he started blaming me.
Not realizing someone used your credit card, aren't you the foolish one?
My anger was rising.
Also, you've always looked down on me, haven't you? That's you. Don't you see me as anything more than a wallet?
What? You've become such a troublesome woman. I was about to utter the word divorce when Mike, who had been out, returned. What are you doing?
Mike.
Another fight? Give it a rest. His words were not directed at me, but at Dylan.
What's up? You got a complaint against me too?
It's not a complaint, it's a warning. If you keep this up, you'll regret it eventually.
Regret? You've become quite bold in talking back to Dad, haven't you?
Dylan even started snapping at Mike. I regretted ever marrying such a person. Oh, right, I almost forgot to tell you, I'm going on a trip in a week.
How can you be so selfish?
I thought about taking you guys along, but changed my mind. Just stay home and behave. Dylan laughed at us mockingly and left to buy things for his trip. Left behind, we looked at each other. I'm sorry, Mike. Your tuition. So that's why you were fighting. Now I couldn't even send him to college. Even though it was Dylan's fault, I wouldn't have been surprised if Mike blamed me. But instead of blaming, Mike was concerned about me. It's not your fault, Mom. Dad's the one to blame. And it's not like I can never go to college. I felt grateful to Mike for saying that, but was also filled with guilt. I decided I had to get revenge on Dylan to the end.
I need your help with something. Of course. I'm on your side, Mom.
So, we planned our strategy before Dylan returned. And then, in the morning a week later.
See ya. I'll be back the day after tomorrow.
I didn't even respond. What's with you?
At least say something. Oh, and I paid for this trip with your credit card.
Dylan left in a good mood. I wasn't even surprised to hear that.
Is he gone? Gone. Shall we start then?
Yes, let's. We packed up everything except Dylan's belongings. During this week, we had found a place to move to. We decided to move on the day Dylan went on his trip.
We're finally done. It took quite some time. Just need to get the movers now.
Soon the movers came. We left a note in the room and headed to the new apartment. I also decided to cancel the lease on the current apartment. I was the one who had originally signed the lease. Thus, a new life with Mike began.
I wonder what he'll think when he gets back. He'll probably panic. But whatever happens, I don't care.
Serves him right. The day Dylan was supposed to return from his trip arrived. Sure enough, there was a barrage of calls from Dylan. Curious about his reaction, I answered the phone.
Emily! Where are you?
I don't think I need to tell you that.
Stop joking around. I think you're the one who's joking.
Did you check the table?
The divorce papers?
Yes, those.
My name is already on them. Fine. Then we'll get divorced.
With that, Dylan hung up. The next day, Dylan sent a photo of the signed divorce papers. I felt relieved but still had things to do. I immediately contacted a lawyer to get back the money he had used without permission. About a month later.
What do you mean move out?
A panicked call from Dylan came early in the morning. It means just that. I signed the lease, after all. I can do whatever I want with it, right?
I can't just accept that. Come back here now.
That's impossible. We're divorced, remember? I thought it was time to say everything I wanted to Dylan.
Also, I'm getting the money you used back through my lawyer. You did what?
Yes.
I don't need to hold back anymore. So, I'll do as I please. Who do you think allowed you to live like this? I certainly don't think it was thanks to you.
Even over the phone, I could tell Dylan was furious. But his anger couldn't change the reality. Just get out of that house quickly. It's not yours anymore.
You'll regret this.
He hung up, but I wasn't bothered. In fact, I laughed out loud.
What happened? Sorry. That was him just now. And what did he say? Of course, he was angry. Told me that I'd regret this. What's that supposed to mean? It's funny, isn't it?
After that, Dylan, unable to do anything, had to leave the house. He truly got what he deserved. Apparently, Dylan moved back to his parents' house, but that was a mistake. Dylan's hell was far from over. The next day after Dylan contacted me, the lawyer informed me that we could formally recover the money. It looked like we could also claim compensation for all the trouble he had caused.
How dare you do this to us?
Huh? The call from Rebecca was full of complaints.
Thanks to you, we're in trouble. We can't make our payments now. How are you going to fix this?
That's unfortunate.
But it's no longer my problem, and you'll have to resolve it on your end. You should pay in my place since it's your fault. Absolutely not. If you had any gratitude for the help we gave you, you should repay that kindness. I don't feel I owe you anything, so I'm fine. Goodbye.
This time, I was the one to hang up. It was a truly liberating moment. This outcome should have been easy to predict. A family all lax about money was bound to collapse eventually. Blinded by immediate desires, they failed to see the reality of their situation.
We finally got our money back.
Yes, but we couldn't make the college payment in time.
It's okay. I'll try again next year.
Mike was incredibly positive. Seeing him like that lifted my spirits. Later, I heard that Dylan and his family, unable to pay their debts, filed for bankruptcy. They ended up losing their house and were left wandering with no assets. I don't even know where they live now.
They filed for bankruptcy. Seems like it. It's their own responsibility. Well, it's not our concern anymore.
Dylan was also interviewed by the police but was just questioned. The police couldn't intervene further. However, this incident reached his workplace, and Dylan was apparently fired. He'll probably regret this for the rest of his life. I'm determined to keep moving forward with Mike, working together as a team.
When are you planning to leave your parents' home? It's about time you grew up. My husband barged into my family home, shouting in anger. It's about time I grew up? That should be my line. The one who's been ignoring me is you. I don't have an ounce of love left for my husband. What's up all of a sudden, after ignoring me for so long? The next moment, my husband, his face beet red, spits out. Since when did my wife get so cheeky? Don't get too carried away just because you're at your parents' house. Did my husband always talk this crudely? Surprised by his harsh words, I fell silent. You really are an idiot. Well, I'll let it slide this time. So hurry up and come home. Despite my husband's exasperated words, I have no intention of going home. Don't you misunderstand? Our marital life is over. What? What do you mean by that? You haven't heard anything from your mother-in-law? Well, let me tell you. I wonder how long this overbearing attitude will last. With a defiant smile, I revealed the truth to my husband. My husband Jackson and I were married 2 years ago. We both worked as sales representatives at an electrical parts manufacturer, and we were in the same batch. We often went for drinks after work. I feel calm when I'm with Emily. Before we started dating, my husband would often say such things, and I felt the same way. That's probably why we were naturally drawn to each other and started dating. We didn't interfere with each other or act overly sweet, but he was someone I thought I could spend my life with. A year into our relationship, he proposed. Of course, I said yes. 3 months after the proposal, we got married, rented an apartment near our workplace, and began our life as newlyweds. We were married, but I had no intention of having children just yet, so I didn't quit my job. I'm going out for a bit. Again? You should help with the cleaning once in a while. I'm stressed from work. I'll do it next time. See ya. Ever since we got married, my husband would always go out somewhere on his days off. It's rare for him to stay home on a day off. I understand that work is tiring, but so is mine. I'm not saying he should help out on weekdays, but it wouldn't hurt to lend a hand once in a while. But I convinced myself that this is just the role of a wife. As my mother was in a similar position in my family home, and I tried not to think too much about it. It was a little sad that my husband didn't help out, but I didn't have any particular hobbies, and I didn't like going out. Perhaps due to my personality, I didn't find housework to be a chore. However, I wished he would offer to help once in a while. One of the major reasons we got married was that we didn't interfere with each other's lives. So I never pressed the issue with my husband, believing that he would eventually start helping out on his own. One night, a month later, my husband came home late, simply saying, "I'm going out for a drink." Who were you drinking with? You were out quite late." I called out to my husband as he was taking off his shoes. However, he just glanced back at me without uttering a word. Then, ignoring me, he headed straight into the living room. Again, did something unpleasant happen at the drinking party? My husband always gets oddly quiet when he's in a bad mood. Best to let him be in times like this. That night, I decided to leave him alone in the living room and just go to bed. There's nothing more to be done once he's in this state. He would refuse to engage in any conversation whatsoever, and dealing with him would only leave me drained. By the next morning, he'd probably be back to his usual self. The following morning, as I was preparing breakfast, my husband woke up. "Good morning. Anything wrong yesterday?" I tried to strike up conversation with him as usual, but he just glanced at me and didn't say a word. He took a bottle of water from the refrigerator and left the living room without a word. His demeanor seems odd this time. Normally, his mood improves after a night's sleep. This has never happened before, and I was genuinely perplexed. Not speaking to me for 2 days? He must be in a terrible mood. I decided not to push him, and did not initiate any conversation. Let's just see how things go for a while. That was all I was thinking. However, his mood didn't change that evening, nor the next day. Should I continue to just wait and see? I was worried. I had never been ignored by him for several days before. What if we can't mend our relationship? Desperate, I tried to create opportunities to talk to my husband, but he ignored all my text messages and notes. What could be upsetting him so much? If it's something I did, he could just tell me. If he doesn't want to talk that badly, I decided to try slipping a note into the sandwich I packed for him. He eats all his meals at home and seems to be eating the lunch sandwiches I make for him. If there's a note from his wife in his lunch at work, he might react, I thought. But this strategy, too, was futile. Having run out of options, I decided to take drastic measures. I chose not to prepare dinner. When my unsuspecting husband came home from work, there was no dinner ready as usual. In this situation, he would have to say something. After looking at the table, my husband turned his gaze to me. Is he finally going to say something? I held my breath, waiting for him to speak. But my expectations were in vain, as my husband simply left the house. I was utterly shocked at this. He left without saying a word. Is marriage really this hollow? I was completely ignored by my husband and sat stunned on the living room sofa. My husband didn't come home that night, and I spent the night alone. In the morning, there was still no sign of him. Did he go to work directly? As I thought this, I found a note on the table. Do not slack off your duties as a wife. It was written in a nasty scrawl. How dare he, the man who won't even talk to me properly? Why is he ignoring me to this extent if he wants to be in a relationship? We haven't had a proper conversation in a month. The moment I saw the note, a surge of anger towards my husband erupted within me. I can't deal with this anymore. I can't bear it anymore. I'm going back to my parents' house. There's no point in living together if he doesn't even want to talk. It's suffocating. I'll leave. Leaving those words beside my husband's scribbled note, I decided to return to my parents' home. After an hour's journey from the apartment where I had been living with my husband, I finally arrived at my parents' house.
Emily, what in the world happened?
The parents who welcomed me home were obviously shocked. Understandably so. Their daughter had unexpectedly come home. When I explained to my surprised parents that my husband had been ignoring me, they welcomed me in without saying a word.
Emily, you must have been having a tough time. Stay here until you feel better.
Their kind words meant the world to me. I was also deeply relieved to be in an environment where I could talk about my situation. Thank you. I think I'll watch how things go with my husband from here for a while. I expressed my gratitude to my parents and decided to observe my husband's behavior from afar. On the day I returned home, predictably, I received no communication from my husband. Normally, you'd expect a husband to at least call when his wife says she's going back to her parents' house. Well, whatever. Until he reaches out, there's no way I'm going back or making contact. I swore to myself, but even after several days, there was still no word from my husband. No calls, not even an SMS. And of course, he never showed up at my family's home. If he's going to completely cut me off, then two can play at that game. Initially, I was quite stubborn about it, but as the days with no contact from my husband dragged on, I eventually stopped caring about him. Before I knew it, half a year had passed since I returned home. One day, as I was about to head out shopping and opened the front door of my parents' house, my husband was standing there, looking like he was ready for battle. Why are you here? Having completely forgotten about my husband, I unintentionally let out a voice. He must have come because he wants to say something. I wonder what he'll say. I braced myself as I looked at my husband standing rigidly, but all he did was glare at me in silence. Oh, so he's still playing this ridiculous silent game. Then I have nothing to say to him, and I wish he'd go home. With that in mind, I tried to leave for the store, ignoring him. But without saying a word, he tried to enter the house. Wait! What are you doing? Stop! I hurriedly tried to stop him, but he just looked at me as if he couldn't understand why I was trying to stop him. Don't just barge into someone's house. I'll call the police, I blurted out at my husband. Seeing me react like this, my husband smirked.
You've become quite cheeky for a wife.
My husband's voice, which I hadn't heard in a long time, was low and cold. What do you mean, cheeky? You're the one who's been ignoring me all this time. I'm not pleased with you suddenly showing up.
Huh? Since when did you get so high and mighty? Don't let staying at your parents' house go to your head.
Wait, did he always talk this rudely? Getting above my head? Me? I never thought I'd be accused of that. As I fell silent under my husband's pressure, he kept on ranting.
Don't mess around. You've left our home empty for half a year. You're not doing anything yourself, and you're just relaxing at your parents' house. Well?
No, hold on. Why do I have to be scolded like this? After all, it was him who started ignoring me. Though I had been taking his one-sided accusations, I started to feel a surge of anger towards my husband. All right, I've got something to say too. Why should I take the blame? This whole thing started because you decided to ignore me, you know?
Huh? Why are you so mad? Calm down, okay? I'm willing to forgive you now. Just come back home.
My husband uttered with an air of superiority, completely unfazed. How can he act so high and mighty? Hearing this, I retorted, "Forgive me? I don't need your forgiveness. To me, you're nothing more than a stranger now." At this, he looked utterly bewildered.
Huh? A stranger? What are you talking about?
Don't make me repeat myself. I meant what I said. He exploded in anger, his face reddening once again.
Stop talking nonsense. You've been living leisurely at your parents' place for 6 months. Has it made you lose your mind? We're married, aren't we?
If we're married, why didn't you bother to talk things out? You ignored me because you had issues with me, didn't you?
Don't make assumptions. I never said any such thing. Pack your things now. We're going home.
Ugh, I've reached my limit. Why do I have to put up with this man's nonsense? He's so clueless about what's happened during these 6 months. Poor guy. Maybe it's time to show him the reality. You're shouting and yelling, but do you know anything at all?
What do you mean, anything?
Did you hear nothing from your mother?
I didn't hear anything. What are you talking about?
Really? You don't know a thing, huh? Let me enlighten you. Your mother brought over the divorce papers. They had your signature. And since I no longer wanted to be with you either, I signed them too. A month after I moved back into my parents' house, I received a call from his mother. She asked me to meet her at a nearby cafe. There, she had handed me a set of divorce papers, bearing my husband's signature. What does this mean? What does it mean? I heard from Jackson that you haven't come home and you're not even communicating properly anymore. Her eyes bore the same cold look my husband usually gave me. So, Jackson asked you to give me these divorce papers. Oh, yes, he did. A surge of joy filled me. I was free from my husband. Thinking about it gave me such a sense of relief. Understood. Then I'll sign the papers for the divorce. The moment I received the divorce papers, signed by both me and my husband, I immediately filed them at the family court. So, there you have it. Do you understand? We are no longer in a marital relationship. When I made it clear to my ex-husband that we were divorced, he lost all his energy and started panicking. His face turned pale, and he was breaking out in a cold sweat.
No, that's not what it is. I gave the papers to reassure my mother.
A mother who would be reassured by receiving divorce papers? I was dumbfounded by my ex-husband's response. So?
I didn't intend to file those divorce papers. They're invalid.
If he had no intention of filing them, why did he sign them? Furthermore, once they've been submitted to the family court, they can't be easily invalidated. Just so you know, I've already filed the papers at the family court. They can't be invalidated now, okay?
You think just apologizing to the family court will take care of everything, huh? I'm willing to do it with you. You realize it'll be a real hassle if we go through with the divorce, right?
Just how much does this guy enjoy toying with people? Does he think I'll be at a loss if we divorce? That's ridiculous. I won't have any problems, actually.
No, you will. We're not exactly young, are we? Who'd want someone our age who's divorced? That's why I'm saying we can just ignore this whole divorce thing. You should listen to me. It's a good thing, right?
Even now, my ex-husband still talks like this. Can this man do anything else besides putting on airs? Why did I ever marry this guy? I thought to myself, exasperated at my husband's words. You know what? You're only thinking about yourself. We can't just pretend the divorce didn't happen. And I won't have any issues even if I split from you. Plus, I already have someone else. It seemed like my ex-husband didn't quite understand what I was saying. He fell silent, saying nothing. You don't seem to understand, so I'll say it again. I'm seeing someone else, and it's not you. This time, he seemed to understand. My ex-husband suddenly started making a fuss.
What do you mean? Huh? You're lying. You're just saying that because you don't want to come home.
It's not a lie. It's the truth.
No way, you're making a fool out of me. I won't forgive you.
He can't refuse to forgive me. He can refuse to forgive all he wants. It's still the truth. I wondered how I could make him believe it. As I was puzzling over this, I felt a presence behind me.
Are you okay? I heard raised voices. What's going on?
The one standing behind me was my boyfriend. I'm okay. I'm sorry for worrying you.
That's all right, but you said you were going shopping, and you've been standing here for a while. I wondered what was up.
My ex-husband looked up at my boyfriend, who had just come out of my parents' house. That's understandable. My boyfriend is a recent hire in field work at the same company where my ex-husband and I work. Because of that, he doesn't know much about my ex-husband. He's quite tall and solidly built, having played rugby for a long time.
Emily, who is this guy? Do you know him?
Oh, him? That's my ex-husband. While my boyfriend and I were talking, my ex-husband couldn't utter a single word. He seemed to be intimidated by the sheer difference in physical stature.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
My ex-husband was so overwhelmed by my boyfriend's greeting that he started to step back.
And what exactly does your ex-husband want? He's not bothering you, is he, Emily?
My boyfriend questioned my ex-husband with a piercing look. Perhaps sensing that he was at a disadvantage, my ex-husband responded,
No, I'm not doing anything.
With that, he tried to leave my parents' house. If you come here again, I won't hesitate to call the police. I firmly pushed my ex-husband out the front door and closed it behind him. He was so scared of my boyfriend, I doubt he'll come again. Since then, just as I expected, my ex-husband hasn't shown up at my parents' house. In the end, his own selfishness and neglect led to an irreversible situation. And to top it all off, he even signed the divorce papers I had given to my mother-in-law. To think that he would actually go through with the divorce. There's no other word for him but stupid. This is all his own doing. A week later.
Hey, have you heard anything from your ex-husband recently?
Huh? Oh, I had completely forgotten about him until you mentioned it. Had my boyfriend not brought him up, I probably wouldn't have even remembered him. I hadn't heard from him, but now that it was mentioned, I was a little curious. I decided to call a mutual friend and check up on my ex. Hey, how's Jackson doing? I haven't seen him at work recently. Well, he hasn't been doing so well since the divorce. He's really lost his spark. Really? I would have thought he'd be just fine. Actually, it seems like he quit his job 3 days ago. Upon hearing this, I was genuinely surprised. That was right after he had showed up at my parents' house, and nobody told me he had quit his job. Wait, why would he do that so suddenly? I don't know if it was because of the divorce, but he suddenly lost all motivation. He told the company that he's quitting to take care of his mother, but he asked them not to tell many people about it because he doesn't want to worry them.
In reality, that's a lie, and he's been lazing around drinking every day. Oh, I see. Thanks for letting me know. With that, I ended the call. I had no idea my ex-husband was dealing with so much. Well, it's his fault, so I guess it doesn't really matter. As a newly divorced woman, I can't marry my current boyfriend right away. But if things keep going well, we plan to register our marriage next year. I hope to build a happy family this time with proper communication.